Hey guys, it's Darwin, and today we're talking about jackets, down versus synthetic, the pros and cons of each, and what's the best jacket for your next hike. So if you typically tune into my videos, you'll either see me wearing this jacket, which is the Mount Hardwear Ghost Whisperer down jacket, or this jacket, which is the Enlightened Equipment Torrid APEX synthetic jacket. Now, because I usually wear one or the other jacket in all of my videos, I get a lot of questions about both of them. I get a lot of questions about what jacket I like more, which jacket should they get. So today I figured I would finally make a video talking about the differences between synthetic jackets and down jackets and why you would want to use one over the other on your next hike. So first, let's talk about down jackets. Now, down jackets are your typical adventure hiking jacket you're gonna see on most people in the backcountry. Down jackets have been around for quite some time, and you can usually spot them out because of the baffle design and the puffy look that these jackets tend to have. Now, there are two different types of down jackets. You can either get a goose fill down jacket, which is made of goose down or goose feathers, or a duck down jacket. Now, duck down jackets are typically a little bit cheaper, and they're gonna have a lower fill power than goose down, which is going to be a little bit more expensive and have a higher fill power. Now, speaking of fill power, I get a lot of questions on what is fill power. What's the difference between a 900 fill jacket and a 700 fill jacket, and what does that mean? Fill is a measurement that is used to determine the loft of down. Now, loft is the amount of puff that the actual down feather has. So for instance, if a jacket is 900 fill, it has 900 cubic inches of loft, where a jacket with 700 fill power only creates 700 cubic inches of fill. So you need more 700 fill in a jacket to create the same warmth as 900 fill in a jacket because it fills less space. So typically a 700 fill jacket is going to be heavier because they need more feathers to fill that area than a 900 fill jacket. So that's a ton of information, and there's a lot more science that goes into it, and I won't dive too deep into that, but just know that the higher the fill power, that means that typically the jacket is going to be A, lighter, and B, warmer. One of the most popular down jackets on the market, and one of the most popular jackets that I see out on the trail is the one that I'm wearing. It's the Mount Hardwear Ghost Whisperer jacket. It's insanely light and pretty damn warm for its weight. And it's because they use a higher fill power on the down that they put in there, so they're able to keep the weight down on it. And then I would say the number two most popular jacket that I usually see out on the trail is the Patagonia down sweater. So this jacket is pretty tried and true, and it's been around for quite some time. Now, this is Snuggles' jacket that she wore on the entire Appalachian Trail, and basically the jacket that she continues to wear. Has a lot of miles on it, and as you can see, it's pretty worn out, but it still does the job. So what would be the pro of going with something like either of these down jackets? Well, one of the biggest pros and reason that a lot of people pick a down jacket is because of its compressibility. Because down can be compressed and then it can loft back up, most of these jackets will compress to a very small size so it doesn't take up that much room in your pack. And because down feathers basically weigh nothing, the jackets tend to be pretty lightweight. The number one pro about down is it tends to have a higher warmth to weight ratio, which, going back to what I was talking about with fill, if you have a 900 fill down jacket, it's going to be pretty warm and pretty light versus something like a 700 fill or a synthetic jacket. And what are some of the cons with going with a down jacket? Well, number one is going to be the price. Down jackets tend to be pretty expensive, especially when you're talking about the higher fill, lighter weight jackets. I think when I bought this thing, it was close to $300, if not a little bit over. Now, all that being said, it's been an excellent jacket. It's super warm, it's super lightweight, but it was very expensive. Another con of going with a down jacket would be material. Because the jackets do use a duck down or a goose down feather, that means they're not exactly hypoallergenic. And, well, say if you were something like vegan, you wouldn't exactly want to wear a jacket made out of animal products. And then I would say the number one con of going with a down jacket on the trail especially is the fact that if down feathers get wet, they lose their loft. down feathers tend to clump together when they get wet. Then they can't create the loft to fill the space to keep the warmth inside of the jacket. And when they do get wet, it takes a really long time for them to dry out. Now, they have come out with products in certain down called Down Tech that is actually a DWR coated down feather, and it tends to work a little bit. I've had a lot of products with Down Tech. I believe this jacket has that, but in my experience, still, when it gets wet, it does tend to clump together and it still takes quite some time to dry out. Next up, let's talk about synthetic jackets. Now, obviously the biggest difference between this and a down jacket is, well, it's synthetic and it has no down in it. Instead of using something like a natural insulation like a down feather, it uses a synthetic material that basically does the same thing. It creates a loft to provide warmth from the outside to the inside. Now, there's a ton of different synthetic insulations, from PRIMALOFT to thermal ball, and what I'm currently wearing, which is APEX insulation. Now, most of that stuff is basically the same. It's all going to be made out of a synthetic material. It really just all depends on how they created it. So something like the thermal ball insulation actually mimics down, and it's little bitty puffs of synthetic insulation, so it kind of allows it to fill like down, where something like APEX insulation is one big sheet that just kind of puffs up. And there's different thicknesses of it, so you can create different warmth within jackets. So the warmer you get with a synthetic jacket actually creates more weight, which is totally opposite from down. Now, some of my personal favorite synthetic jackets are obviously the Enlightened Equipment Torrid Apex jacket. If you guys have been watching my channel, you'll know that I love this and it's what I typically hike in. Or something like the new Outdoor Vitals Loft Tech Adventure jacket, which uses that synthetic insulation that sort of mimics down, so it's little bitty pieces that puff up and fill the space. Now, this is actually a jacket that I'm pretty excited about, and I haven't had a lot of time to spend in the field with it yet, but I plan on using this a lot over the winter, so I'll get back to you on how much I like this. So what are some of the pros with going with a synthetic jacket on the trail? Well, number one, for me, at least with this jacket that I've noticed, is it has no baffles. So on a down jacket, you have baffles, and the baffles are these little stitch lines. The reason these are in there is because the down tends to fall and go wherever it wants. So in order to keep all the down in that space, they have to create a baffle or a stitch to make sure that it doesn't fall down into the next section of the jacket. Now, with that stitch also creates a little bitty layer that wind can actually get through. So there's down here, but right there, no down. But with synthetic jackets, because it usually is a one-piece synthetic, you don't have that baffle. So at least in my experience, in my opinion, I feel like I get a lot less draft and I feel like I stay warmer within my synthetic jackets. And then the second pro, and probably the best pro, is its versatility. The reason I have personally switched to synthetic jackets on the trail is because I know that if it's raining, I can hike in it. If it's snowing, I can hike in it. If it's hot, I can hike in it. If it's wet or dry, I am good wearing a synthetic jacket. With a down jacket, there's a lot of times out on the trail where I'm hiking and I know that it's gonna rain, and I instantly want to take my jacket off and then stuff it back in my pack, put my rain jacket on just so my jacket doesn't get wet, so I don't have to worry about the clumping and then having to dry it out later in camp. So what are some of the cons with going with a synthetic jacket on the trail? Well, like I explained earlier, the warmer you get with a synthetic jacket, the more material they use, so that adds weight. So typically, if you're looking at a synthetic jacket that has the same warmth as a down jacket, the synthetic jacket is going to be heavier because they have to use more material to emulate what down can do at its loft. The second con of going with the synthetic jacket is going to be life expectancy. So over time, both down and synthetic start to lose their loft. It starts to break down a little bit. Now, typically a down jacket is because of your oils and your skin and dirt start collecting in the feathers, and it makes them start to smush together. You can usually take it, you can clean it, and get the down to puff back up. But with synthetic material, over time, the fibers in the synthetic insulation, they just break down and the jacket starts to lose its puff and get thinner. Now, over the last 3,000 miles, this jacket has definitely lost its loft and its puff, and it's not quite as warm as it used to be. And then the third con about going with something like synthetic is it's not as compressible as the down jacket. So it does take up a little bit more room in your pack, and you can't really shove it down into one little itty bitty ball and put it in like a pocket, where this is definitely going to take up a little bit more room. So all of that being said, what does that mean for you? Which jacket should you get? Well, I really think that it boils down to what environment are you going to be hiking in the most? And what type of usage are you planning on getting out of the jacket? There are a ton of synthetic jackets and down jackets on the market, and they're all awesome. It really just comes down to figuring out what you need, what your price point is, and how long you plan on using it. Now, I personally, over the last year, have switched from using down jackets on the trail to using mainly synthetic. And that's because I hike in basically all different regions of the country. There's some times where I'll go out and hike in a more wet environment, and there's times like now when I'm hiking in a more dry environment. So for me, synthetic makes sense because I know that I can take it anywhere. But all that just comes down to my own personal use and what I need. What jacket are you currently using in the field? Are you a down or synthetic person? Leave me something down below and let me know your thoughts. If you haven't had a chance yet, go over and check me out on Instagram. I'm posting a ton of new photos lately of some of the things that Snuggles and I have going on throughout the week, plus some pictures from some past hikes. If you found any value in this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.